So adventure was a really popular product, and we were there was some vibe around maybe a sequel to adventure. And somewhere in there, I got the idea of doing a series of games that were contests with comic books, with real prizes made by Franklin Mint. We were part of Warner Communications, and somewhere along there, we had started to be doing bits of comic books with the games. And because Warner Communications owned DC Comics. Warner Communications, I happen to know, I don't know that anyone else was paying attention, also owned Franklin Mint, right? Franklin Mint being a collectible company. I don't know, they made plates and little figurines and stuff, I know, and medallions, and not my scene, but it's a creative world. It's hard to talk about this without going me, me, me. I don't love going me, 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 but a lot of it was, I consider myself to basically have been the showrunner of Sword Quest. The concept was mine, the literary concept, the material. So the games are actually moderately literate and erudite, right? The whole story is put together as a lot like a Grail quest or something in Joseph Campbell. It would be a hero's journey, a spiritual evolution, a life. It's a story of a life, of a energetic, a magical life, right, through these mystical systems. So I embedded it in a lot of historical culture of mysticism, and sold the idea, and it went over big. It was brave, it was ambitious, it was audacious, and it had a certain je ne sais quoi, but I don't know what it is. I'll back up a little bit. There was kind of a bizarre effort to do a combination of Twitch and adventure game, to merge and to create an action adventure. I think Howard tried this in Raiders, right, where he tried to make an adventure game that was built into an action game and merge the two. So I consider Howard and I to be some of the pioneers of action adventure. Got to say this in a certain way. So you'd play this action game and maybe get a clue, a prize that you'd add to your inventory. And if you had that in your inventory, then you could unlock, then you'd be on this map. You wouldn't necessarily see the map, but you'd be inside a maze, and a door would open in the maze, and there'd be another action game there. And so it was kind of like a first-person adventure with action elements. That was basically, and I gotta, looking back at it when I say it that way and knowing what was in the times, it was very audacious. And it was actually very creative. It was really, it was really cool.
The 5200 was a tragedy. The 5200 was a good idea gone horribly wrong.
The big problem that we had at Atari, the thing that killed the industry more than any other one thing, even more possibly than the E.T. video game, is that it was the first product life cycle. No one had ever been through a major success video game console life cycle. So where does it end? Nowadays, when somebody comes out with a new system, they already are designing the next system because they know the life of a system. They know a console is good for a certain number of years, and then it's going to die, and it's going to fall off, and that's when we need to be ready and prepared to come in with the new system. Holy crap, you know, our first machine is finally falling off the cliff. We need something. We have something. We can take the 800, 400, 800 computer, repackages the 5200, spit it out, and we can do it.
So the 5200 was basically what the 400, 800 was going to be 3 years before. It's a tough business. Business is cruel. And you know, like I say, I'll say it again, it was the first time anything was being done. No one knew.
And what happened was the Atari 5200, it grew very large because marketing wanted perceived value, so bigger was better in some respects. And then marketing got really focused on the Intellivision, and Intellivisions had a bunch of buttons. They had a keypad, and they had this disc with 12 distinct regions. And so, hey, if we put an analog stick here, and one that doesn't self-center was the great idea, this will be a better marketing message than the Intellivision controller. And of course, it was a horrible experience. The company lost focus on what was important, and it was gameplay's important. You know, good games sell, bad games don't. If you've got a bad control mechanism, doesn't matter how good the graphics are. It's not going to be fun to play.
Now what do you do? So, and that was the thing. Engineering we really wanted to do something cool, right? We wanted to do like a real next generation because the 400, 800 was already last generation.
The engineering team and the creative team, the game designers, we were so upset, and we all felt that we were making a wrong decision with this controller, that we put together a petition to upper management. And we just explained that, you know, this is a great product, the control is lacking, we've got some other alternatives we want you to see, and my name's number 3 on the list of the petitioners.
See, I wasn't someone who signed petitions so much as talked to people behind the scenes. because I always felt that was more like the way you operate in a corporation. And but I definitely put the word out whenever I could that, like, you know, this is something we either should have done a few years ago or, you know, can't really do now.
We told marketing, hey, we could make this 2600 compatible. They didn't want anything to do with that. They said they must be very separate and distinct. We can't have backwards compatibility, which at the time we thought might be a great feature. It's a good way to get people that have these Atari games already and keep them on the Atari platform instead of giving them an opportunity to jump to another platform. And so we designed the product specifically so that you could never have 2600 compatibility. About 2 months before launch, they demanded 2600 compatibility. And at that time, we had to build an adapter. And then we actually had to modify consoles that were already made, the first ones, to work with this adapter. And we called this thing the piggyback parasite. We were just horribly embarrassed by that situation. That never should have happened.
There was some big time denial, you know, around Atari, because nobody wants their parade rained on. And when it's the best parade you've ever imagined in your life, nobody wants to see a cloud. You just don't want to see it. So we didn't. When you have a tragedy, and I do believe that the fall of the video game industry in the early 80s was a tragedy. It was a tragedy to many, many people. It changed a lot of lives.
I think it's pretty obvious when it comes to the video game crash that Atari didn't have control over the quality.
I mean, it needed some sort of way to keep just anybody from writing cartridges for it.
And so many people saw this video game gold rush and they just, started dumping crap. I remember going into KB toy stores and just seeing, really bad box art and just really just terrible looking games. And that's when I started losing interest, and the market became flooded just with garbage. And it ultimately led to, of course, things like E.T. being, actually buried in the desert like garbage.
And what happened was that E.T. became the face of the crash of the video game industry. And I, of course, was the butt behind the face. That's kind of the way it went.
Greed and hubris, that's what undid Atari. If they just had worked more from a place of focusing on making great games and delivering great games to the customer instead of how can we maximize revenue, I feel like they'd still be a huge powerhouse today.
Frankly, Warner did not understand technology. They didn't understand the consumer marketplace, the video game, and Ray Kassar, you know, I think was afraid of releasing new product because it might not be as successful as VCS. So that's a sure way to fail. And
I regret that we didn't have a new console by '84 that would have made it so that Atari continued to be a really viable business.
we never, ever got down to ever having any process by which we could come up with a better system.
Even to say, I think people do believe that, like, if they just released like the 5200 earlier, or if they released the 7800, or they had done different things, they would could never have, like, they would have survived the crash a lot better, and they would be like a powerhouse today, you know. Like, as a kid, I didn't know much about business, but I just felt like something was wrong.
No one knew anything. Certainly no one knew how to replace an existing console with a new one.
The real one-liner about why the game industry crashed and went away is that it was a first product life cycle and nobody knew what to do.
there's this funny time period in the history of, if I wrote a book on the history of the video game industry, there's this funny time period where we had left Activision and we went from this fabulous AAA office complex, beautiful. We had more space than we needed by a factor of 5, and we went to the most horrible office in Midland Park, New Jersey, in the basement of an optician's office. Game industry, this was after the crash. Game industry was a disaster. And it was just, oh man, what an office. It was horrible. But we survived in it. I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do. So anyway, we're in this horrible office and we're doing C64 stuff at that point. And I get a call from a buddy of mine. Actually, he was our part-time sales guy. And he always visited Toys R Us, and he knew them really well. He called me and said, you know, you're gonna laugh, but they want to know if anybody's doing 2600 games. Because at that point, there were none. Nobody was doing them.
But there were 26 million consoles in homes.
And people were going in Toys R Us saying, why don't you sell games for my Atari anymore? So I said, wow, that's interesting. How many would he buy if he had a 2600 game? He said, oh, you know, 20, 30,000 pieces probably. And I said, all right, I'll get back to you. So we did Title Match Wrestling and Super Skateboarding, first 2 titles. I mean, regular skateboarding, first 2 titles. And he loved them and they sold like crazy. And at that point in time, we were the only people in the world making games on the Atari 2600. My phone rings and it's the Tramiels. So he did some 2600 games. You know, do a couple for us, because word got around. There's actually a need. And then Activision calls and says, do some 2600 games for us? And I said, well, why don't you guys just do them? He goes, well, you know, if I could be completely honest with you, we don't have anything. We don't have the specs, we don't have manuals, we don't have the equipment. He said, we couldn't make a 2600 game if we wanted to. So could you make something for us? I tell people that, they're like, who the hell wanted 2600 games? You know what? No one told consumers that there had been a crash. No one went to their house and said, you don't like video games anymore. Because that's what Toys R Us and Walmart said. People don't like video games anymore. But the people at home were sitting going, God damn, I'm tired of combat. Isn't there something else I can play on this machine? So it was good. We had a great run there. We made a lot of money off those games.
How's business?
Morning.
Terrific. How do you keep track of your customers?
My Atari 400 home computer. Excuse me, Dad.
Why Atari?
Shopped around. It's a lot of computing capability for such a low price.
You use it a lot?
Sure, life's not all fun and games. There's homework, I even program.
Uh-huh.
Atari has lots of software, not all the others do. And of course, only Atari has games like Centipede.
Games?
Well, we executives have to unwind.
Atari home computers. Only Atari puts so much in it for you.
Bought a home computer, huh?
An Atari 800 home computer. Nothing but the best for my son.
Why Atari?
Atari makes computers that, seem friendly, part of the family.
Want to show off?
Sure, they're real easy. Terrific software, huh?
Nice graphics.
And how do you like this for sound capability?
Impressive.
It sure is.
So what's his first project?
Soon, the alphabet. A is for airplane.
Atari home computers. Only Atari puts so much in it for you.
I think the Atari 400, 800 were really the first home computers that I felt like were designed to be in somebody's home and for an average person to utilize.
Atari, you know, made some interesting decisions over the years. I mean, they were #1 in the world in making video games, but they saw home computers were coming, and Apple II was out, and they said, we got to compete with Apple for, you know, computers. So it came down from on high that we were going to make a computer like the Apple II, but better in some way. But the engineering department said, hey, we're video game people. Why are we doing this? But they were told, you will do this. So what actually happened was the engineers made the Atari 800 into the next best video game player. It had all the sprite capability, it had coprocessors in there. You know, the first GPU in a computer was probably in the Atari 800. All of this stuff was going on in the engineering department, and yet the management thought we were making a computer. We were really just making a video game that we could make cool games on.
My participation was mainly on the prototype pre-production side. We had this very sophisticated, allegedly sophisticated, internal interactive test system called the PIT system that we couldn't get a single unit to pass. Labor Day 1979, can you guys work overtime over the weekend? We need to hand build some production units because we need to put them complete through the entire process. They need to be completely finished, consumer product in the box. We need these for JCPenney's so that they can make the holiday catalog. So we worked, I actually didn't leave Atari for about 3 days, hand building these units. And it was like 4 400s and 4 800s to ship on Monday to JCPenney's. They received them at their warehouse, they took pictures of them for the catalog, and then they immediately shipped them back to us. That was it. That's what we needed to do to get this product out.
My main contribution to the Atari 800 operating system, I created a language similar to PostScript that could draw lines and squares and circles and vector graphics drawn into the bitmap of the Atari 800 and put them into the operating system so that I didn't have to put it in any of my games. So I could borrow from the operating system stuff that I'd put in there and use it when making games. So yes, we were tasked with working on the operating system, but we did it our way. We did it in the video game method.
The idea came up that maybe I could get one of these machines for Christmas, and I thought I was going to get an Apple II because that was what I had at school and what I thought was cool. But I got an Atari, and it was an Atari 800 with a tape cassette drive. You know, at first I was like, oh, it's not an Apple, but you know, it's my own computer. It's super exciting. And then the more I got into it, you know, the more I realized it was so much better than the Apple. Probably piss off some Apple people, but it, you know, it was really an amazing machine. I mean, the graphics and sound on it were incredible, and it was a super fun machine to program. And so that was really what got me started.
We had access to the 800, 400, you know, pre-production models for probably a good year before they ever hit the marketplace. And I would literally every weekend check out an Atari 800 and prototype Star Raiders and spend the entire weekend playing Star Raiders. It was just absolutely phenomenal. I couldn't get enough of it.
One of my favorite games in the 800. I really liked Star Raiders. I still play that today. I still bring up my Atari 800 and play that occasionally.
Star Raiders was the killer app. Star Raiders was to the 800 what Halo was to the Xbox. You know, it was the game. You really, pretty much everyone bought it with the system. It was the system seller.
It was very well done. It had a lot of depth. It was easy. It had easy modes where people could get through it, and you could work up to the harder modes. And the harder modes just made things a little more difficult. They didn't penalize you for getting good at the game. So,
what did I do with my 800? And I actually did buy an Atari 800 in the company store, and I paid full price for it, full employee price. And I played Star Raiders because that's what you did on the Atari 800. You know, there was a lot of great stuff about, you know, storing recipes and doing this and learning things. And I did go through some of the learning things, but I played the living daylights out of Star Raiders, which was, I think, probably for a couple of years, the most phenomenal game you could play outside of an arcade.
Atari brings the computer age home.
Okay, Ma, what's the capital of Nebraska? Come on. I'm trying.
Atari home computers can teach you or reach you with important information anytime, day or night.
I already checked the computer. The Bears lost.
How about the Lions?
Oh, you owe me on that, too.
And if your jump shot is a little off, we can help you there, too.
Hey, guys, how about a deal? The car tonight for Atari basketball.
No.
In fact, there's no end to your possibilities with Atari home computers. They're easy to use and afford. But best of all, they just might be the wisest investment you'll ever make.
Watch this. Hey, Mom. What's the capital of Delaware?
Dover.
I told you she's smart.
Atari home computers. We've brought the computer age home.
These families are learning about home computers. The family with the Atari home computer is learning
Spanish, German,
French.
Italian.
The other,
No foreign languages.
the Atari family is learning
3 programs teach us to program.
the other.
We've only one.
And while the Atari family learns to play Centipede Star Raiders, and soon,
E.T.
the other learned
We made a mistake.
over 1,000 programs featuring the world's most popular games, but sorry, only with Atari.
There were so many things near the end of my early days with Atari that I wished, like everything we felt was underappreciated. Like I bought a Lynx and I was trying to find people to play the Lynx with me, and everyone else had a Game Boy. And I was like, you guys, Todd's Slime World, let's do this, let's play Warbirds, come on.
And the Lynx was totally Sam's baby. He loved the notion of the hardware, and Sam, man, he loved the Lynx into the ground, right? Against all odds, he wanted to make it successful. We did the original one that was sort of the original design, and then he was like, no, we got to double down on it and do it and make it better.
Being in the Bay Area, you see these ads, come test video games. So I think I tried out at a few places. Electronic Arts comes to mind. Didn't get the job there, but was lucky enough to kind of get the QA job at Atari. Back in the day, I think it was a lot more fun. People playing 4 Lynx games and then having them all go out of sync and then having to track that down. Like, probably at the 1,000th time that happens, it does get a little old. But I think back in the day, you actually got a lot more input into the games. So a lot of the last Lynx games like Lemmings and some of the early Jaguar games like Cybermorph, the QA department actually got a lot of input into those games from a design perspective. You know what? I think the Lynx was great hardware. I like the fact that it was color. And I think the fact that you could have this like 4-way local multiplayer was great.
20 some years later, here I am buying a Lynx with a RGB output because people are still modding them, and selling them on eBay and stuff, right?
Good luck. Avoid the ground. Avoid the ground. Avoid the ground. Avoid the ground. Well done. Good work. Well done. Where did you learn to fly?
Cool.
Excellent. Excellent.
Super Zapper Recharge.
Excellent.
Play. Zapper Recharge. Super Zapper Recharge. Super Zapper Recharge. Yes. 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 Super Zapper Retard. Super Zapper Retard. Super Zapper. Super. Super Zapper Retard. Super Zapper Retard. Yes! Yes! Super Zapper Retard. Yes! Super Zapper Retard. Super Zapper Recharge. Super Zapper Recharge.
Television is the retina of the mind's eye.
Super Zapper Recharge.
5, 4, 3, 2. Current status, DEFCON 5.
I remember sitting in the room with Jack, and Jack saying to all of us, let's go back to our roots. Let's do at least one more game system.
The controller is quirky. The industrial design of both the CD and the main unit are quirky. And the fact that, like, I guess somebody used the tooling on the main unit to make some kind of dental device. Like, it just has like this weird, quirky history that I think is also inviting.
One of the most interesting things about the architecture of Jaguar was this notion of having the Motorola 68000, which basically was responsible for booting and housekeeping, and then the Tom and Jerry chips.
I mean, I think at the time, 68000 was still a strong processor, but obviously it was in the Genesis and other things, so you weren't really getting that true 64-bit experience. But I think there's games out there that took advantage.
There's so many features in Jaguar that for a developer like Jeff Minter that did Tempest 2000 for Jaguar was like, wow, give me this.
I would say other than Cybermorph, it did not necessarily feel like that quantum leap that we were promised. It wasn't the flying cars, as they say, that we would have in the future, but you could see the potential, and that's what was really cool. You could see the parts of Cybermorph. You're like, oh, fully 3D world compared to something like maybe a Star Fox, which was on rails.
My perspective is the rule of thirds, where if you want to wind up with one really, really great game, you need to lay down 9 bets, because out of those 9, 1/3 probably will ship. And out of those 3 games, one is going to be a hit, the other will be, and the other probably might be a dinger. Yeah. You know, there just wasn't enough momentum behind the Jaguar at that time to be able to do that when Sega and Nintendo were basically already on their 3.5 generation of consoles, you know, at those times.
I mean, if Aliens vs. Predator came out as a launch title, maybe the history of the Atari Jaguar might have been slightly different. I think there are a lot more Jaguar fans today than there were when the system actually came out, and it's cool to see people enjoying the system some 20-odd years later. I believe everybody appreciated the innovative aspect, but on the other hand, the software was late, some of it was a little janky, but I think just saying, you know, time heals all wounds, to go onto the Jaguar forums now and look at the love for the system, honestly, like somebody that worked on it, I can't say that I completely understand it, but I totally appreciate it. I'm like, where were you guys like 20 or 30 years ago? You know, like you would have made my life like a heck of a lot better.
I feel the best Atari games ever made have been made in the last 5 years. Like, I think the homebrew scene is incredible. People have figured out, and it's unfair to compare because the original people had like 5 weeks to make, you know, ET or whatever. And now people can take, it's like a hobby, you can take as long as you want, and you have access to like special chips and stuff. But still, they're still working, eventually making carts that you plug into your original Atari 2600 and they run, and they're super fun.
We saw it evolving, and there was a lot of nostalgia involved for that to happen. We loved this particular game system, and it's a great intellectual challenge.
In 2009, I was given a talk in Philadelphia just talking about the game business and my experience there. And after the talk, somebody came up to me and they said, hey, I just saw this cool book just came out called Racing the Beam. And it's about programming the 2600. And since you mentioned that you worked on the 800, I thought you might be interested in this book. And I'm like, it does sound really interesting.
Back in the old days when I had my Atari 800, I did learn 6502 assembly language, and so I've been messing around and making some of my own Atari games. I'm not ready to make Psychonauts on the Atari yet, but someday I'm going to make Psychonauts on the Atari 2600. Not announcing that yet, but don't tell anyone. But
what is the point of going back to work on one of these old machines anyway? I mean, to me, the point is I want to know what it was like to be, you know, Todd Fryer, you know, and who was, you know, told he has 3 months to write Pac-Man on this terrible machine. And am I a man enough, you know, programmer to be able to do that?
You know, Pac-Man was actually technically quite solid.
it's fun to program for the 2600 because it's unique. It's, you know, 128 bytes, not K, but like bytes of memory. Like, it's so limited that it helps you edit, you know, and so you can't do everything. You can't imagine an experience and then implement it on the Atari. You have to go the other way around. Like, how many blocks can I move on the screen? Like, how can I turn that into a fun game?
It was very, very hard to squeeze a 128 level game with a, you know, title screen and a boss encounter and all that into 4K of ROM, because that's one of the limitations on the 2600 if you're going to live within the original constraints. And so I learned a ton about the 2600 along the way. I had a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work, and I'm proud of the way it turned out.
I think of the homebrew as the hobbyist who wants to see if he can do it, and he makes a game and he makes a few for friends. That has evolved into some actual publishers making Atari 2600 games that are out there.
But there was a guy came on there the other day, and he's like, I just want to say this is the most supportive technical community I have ever been part of. So it is an amazing community and very welcoming to new people. So I would encourage people to do that.
There was no console war in the beginning. There was, you know, in the beginning there was only Atari, and the children looked upon it and saw that it was good and bought Atari, and then asked for Atari games for every Christmas and birthday. The Easter eggs, finding the Easter eggs in Howard's game and Warren's game, you know, those were huge moments for me in my childhood, and my favorite early gaming experiences, especially finding that room in Adventure. You know, that path that everybody, whoever found the Easter egg, follows those clues, and then discovers this, you know, this secret room, this message hidden by the creator of the game, who I didn't even know who he was, and here's his name, and a whole secret room, you know, that most kids who played this game never found. I found this secret place left by the creator, you know, with a message for me. It was profound, and the first time that it ever happened in a video game. And so years later, when I was, you know, I think had the initial idea for Ready Player One, was what if Willy Wonka had been a video game designer? And what if he held his golden ticket contest inside a video game? And that immediately made me think of this secret room at Adventure, and how that could be, you know, how he finds his worthy successor, you know, instead of a tour through the factory where he slowly kills off all the children. It could be an Easter egg hunt inside this, you know, sprawling video game, and it could be hidden the way that those Easter eggs were hidden in the Atari games. And so that, there's no way I ever would have written Ready Player One if I hadn't grown up with an Atari and playing those games and finding those Easter eggs.
As I was reading through it, there was just so much familiarity in there. It felt like, as I was reading it, that the person who had written it, that like I grew up with them. Because some of the names that were in there, some of the locations, some of the references were things that I thought only I knew. And nobody else in the world would understand or appreciate any of it. My literal opening, my email to him, before anything blew up on Ready Player One, my literal opening was just like, we have to know each other because there's things in this book that like only I know. Like, where did we meet before? That was the beginning of our full communication, which led to the stacks.
He read Ready Player One and it spoke to him, and he sent me an email that said, hey, I make video games for a living and your book really spoke to me, and if you ever want to make a video game, let me know. And I was right in the middle of trying to figure out if I could somehow do a promotional contest for the paperback that mirrored the contest in the novel. I wanted to do some sort of contest with 3 video game challenges and a grand prize at the end of it. And because Mike made that offer, I took him up on it. I'm like, oh, well, we could make an Atari game that you have to beat as the first challenge, and it could be the game that Wade makes in the novel.
Part of what made the book feel like it was written for me is because of the context around the 2600 rite of passage in there. Because for programmers in the game industry, 2600 is this really difficult platform to develop games for. To get anything to even appear on screen, to get anything to even work correctly, you have to just break your brain and rid it of everything that you understand about how games are developed today and go back to this kind of like primitive, primordial way of coding. And so for a lot of programmers, it is a rite of passage. If you can do that, you can do anything.
Wade makes his own game, and it's the Stacks. It's based on his life in the Stacks, and he describes it as a Pitfall ripoff that has you climbing around the stacked trailers, looking for food voucher power-ups and trying to avoid like pedophiles. And it's like a 1-paragraph description of this game. But I sent it to Mike, and he's like, "Oh, hell yeah!"
And so I had dabbled over the years with trying to understand 2600 programming. I'd made a couple small games that mastered before me, and that I finally had in 2600, but we're also
the items are hidden in the same place, which is great because we had people making maps pretty deep and pretty replayable. We did video games at home so badly. The fact that other better consoles came later is because they saw the giant cultural and economic behemoth that Atari immediately became. Atari created the video game industry, the home video game industry, and everybody that's come since then is, kind of building on what Atari created.
When we started, video games were almost considered to be a bastardization of this wonderful technology. Why are you using it for fun when you could be creating missiles? I think we stood for innovation, and also we were the genesis story of the video game, which is kind of important. So I think you always have a hallowed position when you're the first.
Yeah.
When we chose the Fuji logo, I wanted it to be an upward swoosh. And I think that if you look at the Atari logo, it's a collective, it's aspirational, just in the nature of the graphic. Also, Atari, I lifted it from the Game & Go. So it's a game word. But I hadn't realized that it also means bullseye.
Right.
It also means jackpot. So, it's got this affirmative. In fact, I was talking to a Japanese guy one time, and he says, "Very good name, Atari. perhaps a bit boastful for Japanese.
You're like spot on for Americans.
Spot on for Americans.
Yeah.
One of the ethos of Atari was work hard, play hard. So we always had games, not just Atari games, but foosball and pool tables in the snack rooms and what have you. What that said was, we don't care when you come to work. If you come to work, get your job done, we're okay. We're all adults here. And we don't care how you come to work. You want to wear tennis shorts and blue jeans? Do you want to wear a tuxedo? We don't care. We had one guy that liked to wear ball gowns, but that's another story. I could tell some stories, though, about how I used to mess with the people who copied me.
Oh, please. Oh, I'd love to hear that.
Okay. Atari started by building games that you could do in a garage shop.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so anybody that had a garage shop could copy us. And so of the 150,000 estimated Pong-type games that were created, Atari only shipped 30,000 of them. So we got less than a fifth of our market.
Right.
You know? And so as we innovated, people would start copying us. And I thought, I'm going to get them. So I had our semiconductor suppliers. We were kind of a big deal in the semiconductor industry because they were selling a lot to the military and that sort of thing, but they'd sell 20 or 100 chips. We were buying thousands.
Right.
And so I had them mismark the chips. So that we had...
That you guys were using.
That we were using.
So if somebody tried to reverse engineer it.
So
wow.
if they reversed engineer and just bought off the shelf those same numbers, they'd populate the board and they wouldn't work.
Did you ever hear of anybody doing that?
Oh yeah. We in fact,
brilliant.
We had one company that basically declared bankruptcy because they had a whole floor full of machines that they worked because they were hurrying to do it.
Oh man.
And we had the temerity to have a champagne party on their front lawn. We celebrated their demise and invited them, of course.
Did they show up?
No.
What do you think Atari's role is, not just in video games, but in popular culture today?
Well, I think that Atari has an unassailable role as being the Genesis story. I believe that it is understood by a lot that it succeeded because of creativity. 30 of those years, it was kind of in hands that were not kind to it. Don't say anything bad. So I think that pieces of the brand were damaged. Not irrevocably, but it could have been husbanded better. And so right now, I think that it would be good to take the innovation legacy and push it forward into the future.
you.